Welcome to Know Live Alaska. My name is Lisa Hiruki-Raring, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar. The series is a collaborative effort by NOAA Fisheries Alaska Fisheries Science Center, where I work, NOAA's Alaska Regional Collaboration Network, and NOAA's National Weather Service. I'm also working with my co-coordinators, Story Oates and Mabel Baldwin-Schaefer, who will be helping me behind the scenes. This webinar series is designed to help you get to know NOAA's work in Alaska, our partners, and the communities we work with, and how we connect with your community. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, studies the ocean and the atmosphere and where the two meet, from weather to ocean to the animals that live around us. This school year, we're presenting monthly webinars that feature NOAA science in collaborations with partners across Alaska. We're aiming to present perspectives from the communities we work with, as well as research conducted by established scientists and students. Today, we're introducing you to Roberta Glenn-Borade from the Alaska Arctic Observatory and Knowledge Hub, and Carla SimsKayotuk from the International Arctic Research Center of the University of Alaska Fairbanks. While we'll be talking about NOAA's role in research and stewardship, we want to recognize that we're all coming to you from the traditional lands of Indigenous communities who have substantial Indigenous knowledge and much to share with us. Roberta Glenn-Borade is presenting to you all from Anchorage, Alaska, the ancestral homelands of the Dena'ina peoples. Carla SimsKayotuk is presenting from the native village of Kaktovik, the traditional homeland of the Nunaaqqit peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge that we're hosting this webinar from Seattle, Washington, the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Duwamish people past and present. Story is joining us from Juneau, the ancestral homelands of the Aquan and Takuquan Tlingit people, and Mabel is joining us from Venta or Wasilla, the ancestral homelands of the Dena'ina and Otna peoples. These communities thrive thanks to the continued sharing of vision, wisdom, values, and leadership of these Indigenous communities and their stewardship of their lands and waters since time immemorial. A few guidelines before I hand you over to our speakers. You're all muted because we have a lot of people on the line and we want to make sure everyone can hear our speaker. However, there's a box where you can write questions, and we encourage you to ask them as we go, and we'll be keeping track for our speakers. We'll stop every now and again and answer a few questions. I'll be handing it over to Story to handle our questions. And we may not be able to get to all of our questions, but we'll try to answer as many as we can. Okay, I will hand it over to Roberta to introduce herself. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's see. Parlagivsi, uvanga Tuurraq, nolor mutun Roberta Glenn-Borade, utkervig miugurunga, inuperurunga, and Savaqatigivlugich University of Alaska Fairbanks me. Hi everyone, my name is Roberta Tuurraq Glenn-Borade. I'm Inupiaq. I was born and raised in Utkervik, formerly known as Barrow, and I work at the University of Alaska Fairbanks with the Alaska Arctic Observatory and Knowledge Hub. A little bit of background on me. Barrow or Utkervik has been an Arctic research hub for many years, and I grew up seeing scientists come to our community to study permafrost or sea ice and other things about the Arctic. But from a young age, I knew that there was a little bit of a cultural barrier between the scientists that would come to our community and the people, my family, who I grew up with, who would talk to them about sea ice or permafrost or weather. So I got interested in seeing how I can get involved in research in Alaska around my community. I studied geography. I really love maps. I love to get out on the sea ice.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We are just trying to troubleshoot here because our speaker just got kicked off the internet and off the webinar. We're trying to get her reconnected again. But I am hoping that we can get in touch with her and that that her connection is okay. So I'm hoping that we're very excited to have Roberta on our webinar today because she has been talking about the Alaska Arctic Observatory and Knowledge Hub. I think that she's trying to get back on again. And I wonder, Carla, since we have you on the line, whether you might be able to get on and talk a little bit about some of your observations that you've had while we're waiting for Roberta to come back on.
Hi, yeah, this is Carla. I can, oops. Hi, this is, I can do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
hmm Um, is my camera on?
Yes, your camera looks fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
um, my name is Carla SimsKayotuk, and I am from Kaktovik, Alaska, Barter Island. It's in the northeastern um, part of Alaska. We're 90 miles to the west of the Canadian border. We have the Brooks Range Mountains 60 miles south of us. Our terrain is tundra, so it's just flat country, no trees. We don't even have willows until we get into the foothills of the mountains, which is about maybe 36 miles south of us. I grew up here. Um, my mom was from here. My dad was from Kansas. He came up to work for the DEW Line daily early warning systems way back in the 60s. Um, I've seen a lot of changes growing up here. My dad worked not only for the DEW Line, but after that, started working for the airlines as um, the agent that would meet the planes and everything. So I grew up watching him watch the weather, watch the clouds. The rest of my family would watch the ocean, the waters, um, and all of that is very important because of where we live. The weather can change very quickly, um, and so you have to be prepared. You have to know what kind of clothing to wear, if you're going to be able to travel out on the land to go hunt or out on the water to take your boat to go hunting. So paying attention to the weather and the climate, um, and even the land, watching how it's all changing is just very important. My first job, well, I used to be a teacher, and then when my dad got sick, I moved back home and took over his business, which is we own a grocery store, and then took over the airline agent business for him. Um, and then so um, after that, then um, I got somebody else to manage the store, and I got hired by the borough as a subsistence research coordinator, and that job consisted of talking to subsistence harvesters, um, asking about their harvesting, the conditions of the animals that they were catching or seeing, um, any kind of concerns they had, weather, um, animal concerns, travel concerns. So I documented a lot of that stuff. Um, and then I decided to go into politics, and one of them was with the borough, and so I couldn't hold a borough job because of that. And then that's how I got introduced to um, the Alaska Arctic Observation Knowledge Hub. One of my coworkers suggested that I put in for that, and that all had to do with observations and things like that. And so I was like, already up my alley. So I joined them in 2019, and so I've been doing daily observations for them since then. Um, Changes that I have seen when I was a young girl, we used to be able to um, go out on the ocean because our ocean used to be flat ice back then. My dad would take us out with a snow machine, and we'd climb in a sled that he'd pull behind the skidoo, and we'd go hunting out there and just go enjoy the weather. Um, the community and my mom um, during springtime would go hunt ducks away from the island. We're on a really small island. Um, and they would travel when they could travel out to further areas. They'd have to travel out on the ocean too, because of the rivers would already start to be coming out, because they'd start at first hunting ducks and geese up on the mainland, and then when the river started going out, they'd go move to further places, and they'd have to travel on the ocean. We can't do that anymore, because all our ocean ice is jumbled by pressure ridges. If we're lucky, we can travel close to shore, um, but we can't go very far because the rivers are overflowing at the mouth of the river. And then so we are no longer able to get to our old traditional spring um, duck camps, hunting camps. Um, the ice on the rivers take longer to freeze up. Um, we don't have as much snow up in the mountains due to the strong winds that we have now. Um, spring breakup happens sooner. Uh, let's see. We have a
Yeah.
lot of erosion. We're losing a lot of our land on the north shore, the part that's um, directly facing the ocean. Part of our island is protected by barrier islands, which is sandbars, but there's a huge section that is not, and we have a lot of windstorms that affect and erode the land away. The tundra, um, we have a lot of permafrost on our island, and that is thawing and heaving. So we see a lot of holes where the ground and tundra just fall, because the permafrost underneath has melted.
Thank you,
Yes.
Carla.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those descriptions are it shows that there's a lot of observation going on in your community. We were able to get Roberta back, um, which is great. So we're going to turn the presentation back to her, and I'm sure she'll be calling on you a little bit later as well. But I'm so glad that you were able to talk a little bit about your environment and the things that you've been seeing.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome back, Roberta.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone. Um, let's see here. I'm gonna try to share this video from my story map and see what happens. Um,
The thing about the travel too in the summertime is, remember the barges used to wait for the ice to go, right? Mm-hmm. And bring groceries and housing material and vehicles and other good stuff that every community needs. They used to have to wait for the ice to go. Now they're waiting for the waves to die down. We have to wait for another 2 weeks for them to finally land. So that's the other big change that we see. They used to wait for the ice to go away. Now they're waiting for the waves to die down.
The folks from the university, when they came up here to do the sea ice study, they came up here to do a study in 2019, and there was hardly any ice to study because we just didn't have any ice that year at all. You know, we're 30 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and the Kotzebue Sound was ice-free for most the whole year.
okay, that was a success. So those were some snippets from Billy Adams and Bobby Schaefer, the kind of perspectives that we hear, the kind of story that we hear from the observers, not just numbers, not just is the sea ice there or not, but what does it mean for the people in the community? And this is where I was going to hand it over to Carla to introduce herself and talk about some of the changes that she's seen. We hear a lot from Carla, and we get a lot of amazing photos from Carla of polar bears around town. I know that she notes that polar bears are around Kaktovik more frequently these days, but that is not normal. It's not historically normal. It's a new thing. It's a new normal for Kaktovik people today. I know that Carla also talks a lot about the weather and tundra conditions down south of Kaktovik for hunters who go hunting in the Brooks Range in the mountains for sheep or caribou. Carla, I don't know if you wanted to share any more here. I didn't hear everything that you said earlier.
I can. Um, with what Bill, I just wanted to follow up with what Billy was saying and Bobby as far as the ice being there and not being there. Um, in my community, we only fall whale. We don't spring whale like some of the other communities across the slope. We only spring or fall whale, and my mom would go out whaling with her brothers, and they have stories of how they would sit on the huge ice floes and have lunch and have a break and all gather on all the boats, and probably I'm talking like maybe 7 boats with 5 to 6 people per boat, would park at these ice floes and go on there, and they'd have lunch and watch for whales from the piece of ice floe that was huge. And now we don't have that anymore. We might at the way beginning of the summertime when the ice first breaks up and stuff like that. The ice might hang around for a little bit, but once the wind comes and it blows that ice out, we probably won't see it again until freeze up time. So that's how drastically it has changed. Um, and Roberta speaking on the hunters to go hunting. Um, for us, our hunters go out and they hunt for Thanksgiving and Christmas and for Thanksgiving feast, because we gather as a whole community at our community center, and we celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas feasts together. And the hunters go out, used to be in October, to go hunt for sheep, because that's the main source of, other than the whale, um, they would provide sheep, and the community would make sheep soup to serve at the Thanksgiving feast. And now the guys can't go up until middle, or maybe the beginning to the middle part of November. And sometimes it's just a couple days before Thanksgiving that they come back with sheep. It's really tough on them because there's no snow, like I had mentioned earlier. There's hardly any snow anymore up there due to the strong winds. So it's tough on their snow machines. They break parts, and often have to travel through gravel or even bigger boulders and stuff like that. And so they have to be real careful. They have to watch for the overflow. Um, and so yeah, it's tough on them, and we really appreciate what they bring back and are very thankful for that. And um, yeah, I think that about covers. We're starting to see salmon up here that we never used to see. The water, the ocean is warmer. We can keep our hands in the water when we're setting our fish nets and checking our fish longer. Um, yeah, I think our grass is growing taller. Our flowers are growing taller. Uh, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful to give you an insight of where I'm from. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Now, I wanted to have everyone here in the audience think about what were the conditions like in your community this morning? Were they normal? How do you know? Did you see any animals? Was there open water? And I don't know if anyone is able to share, or if this is just maybe an in-classroom discussion or activity that people can discuss. But I'll just share here that I remember when I used to walk to school every day, the wind, when I would walk to school, the wind would be blowing at my back. And it was a nice walk to school. That's how I knew the weather conditions were normal. And it can be helpful to think about events that happen around the same time every year. And so how has the weather changed over time, maybe for the first day of school? And how do you know? I don't know if anyone is able to share, or is that possible? I'm not sure.
So if everyone wants to, you can type your answers into the question box. So if we have classrooms, your teacher could type in. So we'll give everyone a few minutes to enter in their observations. So again, what were the conditions like in your community this morning? Were they normal? What did you see? How do you know it's normal? So go ahead and type that into the question box, and then we can read your answers out to everyone.
Yeah, here in Anchorage, it's sunny and I think it's unseasonably warm, but I haven't been living here long enough to develop my own normal.
Can I say something, Roberta, on that?
Yeah.
So today and yesterday we're above zero, like maybe 6 above, feeling like -10. And the other day we didn't even reach feeling like -10, but just a few days ago we were feeling like -47 wind chill, -47. And so these 2 days, and this morning when I checked my weather app, it said winter weather warning. So up here we know when we get really warm weather like this and it's calm and clear, and warm, we know that we call it the calm before the storm. So we know like in a couple days or so we're gonna have bad weather. And so this morning when I looked at the weather app, I was like, oh, yep, it was the calm before the storm. So we have a lot of hunters that are out right now taking advantage of this really warm weather, trying to go and look for caribou to put food on their tables. My husband's out. He went out yesterday, came back a little bit after dark with a caribou for us. So we were really happy. I know that my niece and sister are out of meat, so he's trying to go and get some more so we can provide more for our family. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Carla. We
Mhm.
did have an answer from Mrs. Anderson's third graders from O'Malley Elementary in Anchorage. And they said this morning was normal in Anchorage, cold, clear, dry, beautiful full moon. January was very warm, windy, and rainy. I will say in Juneau, we had, it's been very cold, but very clear and beautiful. Lots of sunshine, but we're in the 20s right now. And again, I'm new to Juneau, so I've only been here. This is my 4th winter, and I will say every single winter has been different, which I will say is probably not normal, according to many people who have lived here for a lot longer. We have one of our classrooms, Miss Jennifer from St. Paul School. They're saying we have fair weather today. It's sunny. We haven't had snow for a couple of weeks now.
And then Mr.
And
Grossman's class also had a statement saying that it's warm, 40 degrees, and melting what little ice we have on our lake. We have had almost no snow all winter, no snow machines for us this winter. And we have another classroom from Valdez, Miss Sanders' class, saying that in Valdez we've had an unusual winter. Our snow came late this year and we had a lot of rain first. This morning, students noticed that the sun is rising earlier and earlier, and the cold we're experiencing is pretty normal for this time of year, but it is strange that we still have so little snow for this time of year.
Wow. Yep, it's been a weird winter. It's been a weird year. And I know that's what we've been hearing from each of the AAOKH observers. Things are warmer than usual, a little bit stormy, windier. We had really strong winds here in Anchorage, I know, and I know it's been kind of stormy across Alaska the last couple of weeks or months. Wow, someone joining from Hawaii. Hawaii weather is pleasant with clear skies. Dang, that sounds nice. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I just wanted everyone to stop and think about why it's important to monitor your environment, to think about how the conditions are every day and how they're changing over the long term. If we can document small changes over a long period of time, we can start to understand trends. What's to come? Is this a new normal? And so I just wanted everyone to think about that for a minute. I think I'm going to get back to the slides. Let's see. So AAOKH, we are increasingly looking towards Alaska organizations that we can build connections with, where observations like these, long-term observations, can inform decision making. And so here in Alaska, we hunt a lot, we go fishing, we go hunting, we go whaling. A lot of the animals that we rely on here in Alaska, they are managed by the federal government. There are people who make rules about when, where, how, and when, where, and how Indigenous people in Alaska can legally harvest their traditional foods. And so those governing bodies, those people who make the rules, they have committees for whales, for polar bears, for seals, for fish. And we are working now to see how observations from AAOKH, particularly around wildlife, how these observations can inform wildlife co-management in Alaska. And so we are trying to increasingly document body conditions, abundance, location, timing of migration. How does a hunter know that their catch is healthy? How do we know when and where the animals are going to be? And these observations, they're rooted in Indigenous knowledge and Inupiaq worldview. People who are very, very familiar and have deep relationships with the animals that we rely on. And so we're looking to see how these observations can inform these governing bodies, the wildlife co-management organizations. And through the observations, we can also capture some anomalous or unusual observations. And so this one is from Bobby Schaefer in Kotzebue. He says, seals that become landlocked in Kobuk Lake always make their way over land. And there's a photo here of seal tracks crossing over the land, which is pretty unusual. You don't usually see seals crossing over the land. But here he shows a photo. Yesterday, 4 seals made their way past the town to open water. So some behaviors of animals even that are captured through these observations. We have another example here from Billy Adams in Utqagvik. He says, we had lots of west winds that changed a lot of things. He responded to about 40 polar bear calls, which is a lot for Utqagvik. But he notes that there's lots of healthy young animals. The hunting was very good. And this is August 2023. No, wait, this should be February. But he notes the sea mammals appear to be very healthy. The sea animals that we depend on for food and customary practices appear to be healthy. And he shows the thickness of the seal blubber there. And so now I just have some photos to share. Getting to the end of our presentation, we really value our time spent in person together. We travel a lot to Tuurraq and Kotzebue for field work, different types of field work. We're going to be planning to go to more of the AAOKH communities, including Point Hope and Kaktovik, in the coming years. But we really value our time in person together, learning, spending time out on the land, on the sea ice, and working with students. We do education and outreach. Wherever we go, we try to talk to students, get in the classroom. But we really enjoy working with each other, learning from each other, sharing stories, sharing muktuk, sharing food, and being in community with each other. And I think that's really the heart of our work is the awesome people that we get to work with and learn from and work towards our shared goals. And with that, I think that is about
Roberta, I was wondering whether you might go back and give a little bit of an overview again of AAOKH, because we weren't sure quite when things got cut off.
Okay, let's see. So I went over some goals, our AAOKH goals. I think I got cut off right when I was gonna do the video. I can maybe come here and just say that, you know, we work to document a lot of different things in the community, in each of the AAOKH communities. For example, in Tuurraq, we work with hunters and whalers to map whaling trails and ice thickness in the springtime for spring whaling. And so every spring we go out before the whaling season starts, and we try to map all of the whaling trails that crews have built across the sea ice to get to the open water. We also work in Kotzebue to measure the ocean temperature and salinity with a scientific instrument that we drop in the ocean, and we leave from January to about May. So that's about.
Well, it seems like Roberta may have gotten cut off again. Not quite sure what happened there. But I seem to have seen that her screen got cut off before her audio did. So if you have any questions for Roberta, please put them into the chat, and we're hopefully going to get her back again. I am not quite sure why she got cut off, but one of the things that impressed me about seeing the slides that she had was just the impressive connection between the communities that the AAOKH network has been able to connect with. And actually, that was one of the questions that I had for Carla is, how long have you been, oh, Roberta's back again. So I had a question for Carla about how long she had been connected with the AAOKH network.
I've been working with AAOKH since 2019, so late to the program, but enjoying it. And they just sent me like a new little weather instrument that I have yet to try, but I'm very excited to try it. Reads the gives me real time weather speed and temperature and things like that. So I'm ready to work with that. And I did want to follow up with like the she brought up the polar bears in our area. Um, a few years back, we had set up, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife had set up um, um, high school kids doing ambassador work and meeting the tourists that come into our community to look at and watch the polar bears. And one time I overheard them giving their little talk to the tourists, and I was like, that's not true. We need to correct that. And what they had told the tourists, they had asked if this was normal to have this many bears around, and they were like, yeah, it's always been like that. And I was like, oh goodness, we need to correct them and educate them. It's normal for the youth now to see that, all see the bears around all the time, but it was not like that when we were growing up. The bears would it's were along their natural migratory path because they move back and forth throughout um the the ocean trying to find food, and they go between here to Canada and towards Barrow. So they just move all over the place. And all of this may have been, we're established here now, but our island didn't become a permanent um, establishment until the early, um, maybe the early 50s, when, and it goes back to the Cold War. Um, the Air Force military people came and they decided this was going to be their place where they wanted to establish their daily early warning systems. It's big radars, microwave radars, so they could have communications. And so they came in, and some of the residents that were here had houses along one of the sandbars attached to the island. And they told them they needed to move. And so they moved without any help from the military. And then the military came in and started, they bulldozed everything, all the sod houses that were on that sandbar, and made that their runway. And then, so there was no, you could see really old whale bones along and around our island, but there was no community. So we know there was whaling here at one time. But when my mom and them were asked to come back, because my mom was nomadic, she traveled up and down the coast as far as all the way into Kaktovik in Canada and all the way over to Wainwright, Alaska, is where all of her siblings were born, all along the coast and up in the mountains. And so when they established and got people to come back to help build the runway and the dew line site, is when our people started staying here permanently. It didn't become a city and established as a city until 1972, maybe. Um, and that's around, some of the ladies had married some guys from the dew line that were from like Wainwright or Barrow. And so those guys grew up whaling. Um, because my mom was nomadic, I don't even think she ever had whale until then. Um, so those guys that were from Barrow and Wainwright got the community to start whaling again in the early 70s. And so I know a lot of people like to say, um, we feed the polar bears. So this is going back to, hopefully I don't lose my track of thought. Um, we have an area that's called the bone pile. And that's where we bring the bones from the whale after they've butchered it and everything. And it, in the early years, they were able to um, take a tractor or loader and take those bones out into the ocean until finally someone broke through with a tractor or loader. And so the Boro said, nope, that's our equipment. We can't afford to lose any equipment. So we had to find somewhere to put those bones. So the community decided the furthest location was at the end of the runway. Um, and it went off to the side, so it was not like in direct path of the planes coming in. Um, and so they started putting the bones there. And then so those bones slowly accumulated. And at the same time that's happening, the ice is starting to um, not hang around our community. And with a combination of both of those, um, where's the polar bears gonna go? They come to the Berry Islands to rest because the ice is so far away for them to stay on, and they're naturally migratory animals, and so they come and they stay along and travel along the barrier islands, going back and forth. Uh, and then at the same time, we have this bone pile here. And then so they got used to going and having a little snack at the bone pile, picking off what they could find off of the bones. And so and that didn't happen until maybe the late 1980s, when we started to see an influx of polar bears hanging around our community. So, of course, by the time these kids who are high schoolers and young adults now, it was normal for them to see a whole bunch of polar bears around. But for us older ones, it was not. And so we had to go and educate them about our area so they could get the right message across to people coming in to visit. So just wanted to
Carla,
throw that
there's a
in.
question here.
Oh,
Is how big is Kaktovik population-wise, and also what are some problems snow machiners have?
so we are a community um, of about close to 300. We're not quite at 300. At one time, we might have been just a little over 300 people, but we're about maybe 260 people, maybe. Um, we're on an island, which is very close to the mainland, but there's still ice surrounding our island during the winter time. Um, Problems that the snow machiners have with the new ones that they have now, you have to have snow for them not to overheat, and powder snow, soft snow, so it's kicked up into the machine to keep it cool. Well, if we have snow, it's hard snow, and so it makes it harder for those guys who have the oil. I don't know what they're called now, but it's harder for them to keep their machines cool so they can travel. So because of the lack of snow, um, say, and then because we're on the island and we're to get out to go hunt, we have to depend on that ice between the island and the mainland being solid. So the guys often, um, in the when it's fall time, they're going and they're checking how thick that ice is, and everybody's like, "Well, is it safe yet? Is it safe yet?" So they can get up to into the mountains, and they have to travel 30, 40, 50 miles to get to where they're wanting to go to hunt for the sheep and the caribou and try and ice fish for some fish. Um, so their problems are lack of good snow to travel, um, cost of fuel. Um, the area for Billy was also talking about the barges coming in to deliver goods. Um, the area that the barge comes into to our community to deliver our fuel and other things is the channel is closing. It's getting narrower and narrower and shallower, and so a lot of times the barge will get stuck coming in, and so he has to really maneuver around and use his propellers and stuff like that to make it to where they can come into where their staging area is. Um, but yeah, I would say the lack of snow and good snow for their machines. Hope that
Yeah,
answers the question.
And I remember, Carla, you've shared not that it's not snowing, but the winds are blowing so hard that
Yeah.
any snow that could try to accumulate just gets blown away or drifted.
Yes, we have way stronger winds and real consistent winds sometimes. I could step out my door and you'll see there's lots of snow there because it's piled up against my house. But if you go out to the open country, um, there's hard, you can still see brown. And when I was young, you couldn't see the grass or the tundra during wintertime. But now you can see it. There might be some snow on there, but it's not anything of good depth. And then that brought up when you were saying something earlier too, I started thinking, wow, when we were young, we'd go on our spring breaks were to go up into the mountains, go spring camping to hunt for squirrels and ptarmigans and fish out of the rivers. Um, and one time we ran into a storm. And so we were traveling with another family. So there was both my parents and the other family's parents and um, 4, 5, 7 kids traveling with snow machines and sleds. And our sleds were back then were made out of wood, and they would be anywhere from 12 to 10 feet long. And we'd pack everything on there: our tents, sleeping gear, wood stoves, gas. But anyway, we decided to try a different area. Normally we camp on along the Hula Hula River or up in the mountains along the Hula Hula River. This year, our parents decided to go to the Jago River. It doesn't have as much wood along that river, and you have to be way far up inland to even start finding any. And so we went and we ran into a storm. So the parents decided just keep going, try to see if we can get out of the storm. We set set one camp, and then the storm reached us again. So we had to tear down our camp and go back up again. Um, us kids were ready to go home. We tried to tell them to go home, um, but it didn't take until they ran out of their cigarettes and stuff for them to decide, okay, we'll try travel in this weather and make it home. So we took off, and then we ran into really bad whiteout, windy conditions. And the other family had 2 younger kids that were like maybe around 6 and 5 years old, and one of them got really cold. So we decided, well, we're just going to stop and make shelter. And so they decided to use the snow um, to make a windbreak so we could just warm up for a little bit. And so we were able to make a huge shelter with the snow, making blocks. And we didn't quite make a true igloo, but one where we could just block the wind and stay. And then so anyway, they ended up setting camp again there because the 2 younger ones were just getting too cold. So it was safer for them to just set up camp again. Um, but I started thinking when we were talking earlier and listening to you was I don't know if we can do that anymore and make good shelters like that because of the depth of the snow is not there anymore. So I'm going to have to try and pay attention when I'm following along the rivers this year to see if that's even possible. But I just wanted to share that tidbit. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. I'm not sure. It looks like we have a minute left. I don't know if we'll get
Yeah, I
booted
think we'll
off
have.
of. Yeah,
I
Lisa, can
think
you?
I think we'll have to we did have one last question about polar bears, but I think that maybe because we're so close to the end here, we should just see whether you and Carla have any words of advice for our students who are on the webinar today, whether you can think of anything encouraging or pieces of advice from your own lives that you can pass on to these young folks.
Carla, you want to go first?
Um, Piece of advice, just pay attention to what's happening around you. We're seeing the changes, but I'm more than certain you all are going to be seeing changes in your area. Listen to what your elders have to say, and just be observant and pay attention to what's around you. You're going to learn a lot by doing that, and stay warm, study hard, and be safe.
Yep. And I will just say, stay curious and take lots of classes that are interesting and maybe some like out of your comfort zone. That's how I realized what I was interested in, is I first had to find out what I wasn't interested in, and that takes trial and error. And so don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and learn new things, because that's also how you learn what you don't like.
Well, Roberta and Carla, thank you so much for joining us and talking about your organizations and all of the observations that the changes that you're seeing in the Arctic. I think that we learned a tremendous amount despite our technical difficulties. And we're really grateful that you were able to take the time to speak with us today.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you,
Alrighty.
guys.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, and thanks to
Yep.
all of our viewers. We'll be back for one more webinar on March the 4th, and I think that will be it for our season this year. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Roberta and Carla, for being our speakers, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.